Oh man, they still haven't greased that door yet. Anyway folks, hope you're all keeping well out there. And yep, we're back at the mail house again. Maybe I should have made that opening a wee bit bigger. Okay, I'll just do my dramatic head torch entrance and we'll cut to the main story. Now, for those of you who didn't see the last video I did when I was here, this is basically a bulk storage facility for animal feeds. And the owner asked me if I could come down and try and reduce the number of crows, magpies, rooks and jackdaws that seem to flock to here hoping to get a free feed. But since there isn't really anywhere outside to set up a decent hide, I came up with the idea of sitting in the shed with the door open a few feet and decoy the birds to the concrete yard outside, which seemed to work fairly well at the start. But unfortunately, once you shot a few birds here, the rest of them all too quickly realised that this part of the yard was a wee bit hazardous for their health. Like for this instance, even though I shot this hooded crow in the head and it stone dead, it went into a fit of somersaults, which quickly tipped the rest of the birds off that, yep, that's wild dangerous down there. So it was quite a wait before this rook appeared. Which I made short work of with another headshot. And again more flapping, which is just something that happens with headshots at times. But after a few hours I got itchy feet, as we'd say here in Northern Ireland, and my patience broke, so I moved to a spot overlooking a tall chestnut tree about 38 yards away that the birds seemed to like. Unfortunately, even though there wasn't much of a breeze blowing, I just could not find my point of impact. 1 minute it seemed like you had to allow to the left for the wind, then the next minute the right, and it was doing my head in.
Oh, would you not believe it?
So, the only other casualty of the day was this very unlucky magpie, which caught the pellet in the back of the head. So, the next Saturday I went back, determined to do a better job, and ignored the idea of setting up in the mail house again and went straight for the chestnut tree beside the stream, as the birds seemed to like it, hoping, above all hopes, that the wind would be far more predictable, but as you can hear, that wasn't the case. But it was still a nice place to sit, as I seen a dipper and a kingfisher just a few feet away from me along the stream. But I quickly realised I was having the same problem as I was the last time, with an inconsistent wind blowing the pellets 1 minute to the left, then the right, as I was constantly taking practice shots at tree branches and chestnuts to try and find my point of aim. So, disgusted with the situation, my itchy feet kicked in again, and I decided to move to a different spot. I haven't shown this spot before, basically because it didn't really work for me the first time for some reason. But it's an abandoned horse box that actually is so overgrown it can be hard to find your way into it at times. But it overlooks onto a couple of trees that the birds like to sit in, the closest of which is about 30 yards away. Plus there's a couple of overhead power lines that the birds like to sit on as well. By this stage it was quite late in the morning, but it still wasn't too long before I got my first couple of opportunities. The first of which, unfortunately, I took out a branch instead of the magpie.
Would you regret that?
And then the second one, I didn't really get an opportunity for a shot.
Trump.
But finally, my patience started to pay off. Because of the lack of headroom in the horse box and where the hole is in the roof, you have to stick the muzzle of the rifle out through it to get the shot, and I'm pretty sure this magpie could see it. But it didn't do it any good. Ah, nuts. I should have had the shot off there before it turned, but there's plenty more about. Once I dropped a few magpies, the rest of the birds started to take notice, and the bodies started to pile up. Literally, you'll see. Now that was lucky. He turned and faced straight into that shot. You can see here how little headroom there is when you're trying to shoot the birds in the lower branches. But thankfully there is just about enough room to do it, even though it isn't quite comfortable. The hedge outside the trailer on the right hand side is still quite thick and overgrown, which probably cost me the shot on that magpie. This lower branch seems really popular with the magpies, and you'll probably see why later. Time for a quick reload, and yes, I do carry a spare magazine, even though I don't always use it, or remember how many shots I've fired. Change of quarry this time, as a large rook arrives to check out the chaos. Oh, looks like another rook has arrived, but this time on the overhead cables. Oh, keep your head still, would ye? Good bird. I think there was a little more wind blowing than I thought, as I hit this bird a little off centre. It looked good in camera, but I had to dispatch it later on, as you'll see. This bird was actually sitting in another tree behind this first one, at about 40 yards away. I don't know what happened with this one.
Oh, just over his head.
But I really could have kicked myself for missing a hooded crow. Another change of quarry as the jackdaws started to arrive, which seemed to be the main culprit around this yard. I think I got a little too adventurous with this one and tried to take the headshot between the forked branches. Close, but no cigar, hey. Well, I hate calling it quits on a miss, but you have to go home at some point. So I dandered out to pick up what I'd shot, which proved a little more difficult than I thought, as some of them had fell into the thick hedge, never to be seen again. Then there was this little bunch, almost all piled up, in below that low branch, remember I mentioned, where I kept shooting the magpies off? That's what was catching their attention. But before I started gathering them up, I decided to walk round the far side of the hedge to see if there was anything lying there. And I'm sure glad I did, because remember the rook I thought I hit off centre? Well, I found him in the long grass, where thankfully I managed to dispatch him. Yes, yes, we see you, you big ham, you. Well folks, for what started out as a disastrous morning, ended up with a quite decent bag. Now, I'm pretty sure I shot more birds than that, but even after walking up and down that hedgerow quite a few times, that's all I could really find. But on a plus note, the owner was more than happy with my results. I did go back to the same spot a few weeks later, but with different results, as the birds had already learned as soon as they saw the end of that camouflaged muzzle come out that hole, they were away. But I'll try and figure out something to try and beat them again. But until then, take care and look after yourselves, hey.